Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you enjoy the Girl Dad Discussion podcast. I'm your host, Ernest James, and I believe the relationship between a daughter and her father is one of the most important relationships a young lady can have. And therefore, my mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by sharing the voices of girl dads to the world. So check out our podcast on every platform where podcasts can be listened to. And if you want to watch the podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel. Again, that's the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with your host, Ernest James. All right. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I'm your host, Ernest James, and I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you haven't already, make sure that you listen, like, subscribe, and share to our podcast on all of our social media platforms. Also, definitely make sure you guys are checking us out on our new YouTube channel, which is the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network on YouTube, where you will find not only the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, but you also will find our sister podcast, which is the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. So both of those podcasts are available on our YouTube channel, which is the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network. So make sure you guys go and check that out. Also, our product of the week. As you guys know, we are a self-sustained podcast, and the way that we stay on the air is by bringing you amazing products for you to purchase. And this week's product is our Purpose Journal, as well as our Purpose Planner, because we believe you should journal in order to keep track of where you've been and where you are, as well as plan for your future. So you can get your copy of the Purpose Journal and the Purpose Planner on Amazon. The links are in the descriptions below. Make sure that you check out the descriptions also, because there's a lot of great information there for other opportunities and other things that you may be interested in that may be a help to you as well. So make sure that you guys are checking us out there. But we're going to jump right in it today. Just like any other day, we are blessed with the guest, Mr. David. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you, Ernest?
I am good. First of all, let me say thank you for being here, because you could have been anywhere else with anyone else, but you're here with me and my listeners, and we definitely appreciate it. So we want to jump right into this thing. David, do me a favor, introduce yourself to my audience. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
My name is David Shapiro, and I am a father and a husband. I am somebody who works with church. I do ministry. And I am just enjoying my journey that the Lord has brought me through. I'm sure we'll get into the story a little bit later on, but I'm just loving life and loving the journey that I'm on.
Love it. We definitely will get into your story. But one thing I do know, David, before we got started, is that you are a girl dad like myself. So whenever I have a girl dad on, I always ask them two questions. So number one, what does it mean for you to be a girl dad, and what is something that your daughters have taught you?
Okay. What does it mean to be a girl dad? I will tell you that my name is David, but I look like Goliath. I am 6'3", 280 pounds, and having daughters have taught me how I'm mush around them. They have me wrapped around their fingers. So for somebody like me, I was a professional fighter for 13 years. I was in the military. I'm a man's man, and having daughters, I don't know where that guy went. So that's one thing I'll say about them. And then the thing they've taught me, particularly my younger daughter, I always thought I had a servant's heart. And when I look at her, man, she is teaching me what it's like to really have a servant's heart. And it's amazing, beautiful thing to watch.
Yes, yes, I love it. I love it. We're definitely going to have you on the Girl Dad Discussions podcast where we can dive deeper into that story and the relationship with your daughters. I just wanted to point that out. So David, yeah, so let's jump right in this thing. I know you mentioned about being in the military, being a fighter, which I'm thinking is a lot different from the life you live now, right? So let's go
Yes.
back to the earlier versions of David, and who were you, prior, and what was that initial incident that happened that kind of changed the trajectory that you're on now to really go full blown into ministry?
So we'll go all the way back. I was
Mhm.
born an Orthodox Jew. I was actually born Orthodox Jewish, went through and learned, studied the Torah, had my bar mitzvah, and somewhere around 15, 16 years old, I just started to separate myself. I was watching people at a temple, and they seemed to have a relationship with God that I didn't understand. It was only surface level for me. I didn't quite feel what I thought I should be feeling, and I
Mhm.
started to walk away. And at that time, I'm in regular school and I'm learning about science. I'm going, listen, science is going against what I thought was what I was learning in my Hebrew school. And I walked away and I became an atheist. And I stayed an atheist for quite some time and definitely chased adrenaline. My life became, I'm a good person, but the adrenaline's going to fulfill all the little holes in my life, all the holes that I realize now that I had, that came from growing up with an abusive father, growing up with dyslexia, growing up with just not feeling secure about who I am with myself. And I just chased the adrenaline. And I did join the military and I jumped out of planes and I became a
Mhm.
professional fighter. And it was something that I did for the better part of about 20 years of my life. And from there, I literally, there wasn't this long thought process. I saw things happen in my life. My mother passed away. Before she passed away, she accepted Jesus as her Lord and Savior. My brother then accepted the Lord. I just kind of didn't know what was going on. I just assumed that my mother was dying and she needed something to lean on to, and that's where she leaned to. And I didn't
Mhm.
quite understand it. And even my brother, I thought he was crazy, and married a daughter of a Baptist minister, and that was his journey, and that's fine. I didn't understand it, but that's the way he was going. And I woke up and I looked at my wife and I said, I think I want to go to church. And
Mhm.
she kind of looked at me like, okay, it's strange, but okay. And I looked up the closest one to my house and I snuck in and I was in the back row hoping nobody would see me. And the pastor gave a sermon about the heavenly father that loves me, and growing up having a father that did not love me and did everything else, but
Mhm.
it just spoke right to me. And the pastor speaking to me, I'm listening about this God that loves me, and all of a sudden I started feeling differently about God. And when I left, another pastor grabbed me and said, have you ever had this? And gave me a Bible. And I said, no, I've read the Old Testament. I never read the entire Bible. And I read it all in the first week. And it's a feat on its own, but to be
Yeah.
dyslexic and do it, it was just incredible. I couldn't put it down. And I read it again and again, and I needed to learn more about it. I went back to school. I actually went to seminary, and I've continued my journey, and I've been on fire for the Lord ever since. It hasn't quelled at all. And we're talking now, we're going on about 11 years, and I've just been absolutely in love with the Lord. It's really huge turn of events in my life, but when I look back, everything laid out exactly, I think, the way God's planned it to.
Yeah, I love that. Uh, I had chuckle a little bit when you said you snuck in the church and was hoping not to be seen. I'm like, you're 6 feet. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure they see
I
you.
know,
You know. But I want,
100%.
yeah, I want to talk about a little bit, even about the message, and how it reached you where you were,
Yep.
and a lot of times, especially now with myself as being a, you know, having been a minister, and even now as a professional speaker, the messages that we speak, touches people, and but there's like a specific message, like you're there, and the way that it just worked out, that your background was a troubled, troubled past with your earthly father, and then now you hear this message of hope, that there's a heavenly father that loves you unconditionally, and that has already made sacrifices for you before you were even born, to bring you this way. How was that message? How do you feel? That message just at that time, was able just to like to touch your heart. Were you just in a vulnerable space where you were just open for it? I know that you said you woke up one day and was like, you know what, let's go to church today, which probably was, outside your norm.
Yes.
But was there any um, cushion, should I say? I'll use that word. That day, that it just was like that day was the day for you.
I don't think it was. I think it was just so shocking. I think when I walked in, I still had this expectation. It was, hey, let me
Mhm.
see what this is about. But it's going to be, they're going to talk about Jesus, and they're going to talk about, hey, can you tithe to the church? And they're going to talk about all these messages that I felt like I already knew, because
Mhm.
I felt more powerful at that point. Like I didn't need God, and I didn't know I needed him up until that moment. And when I sat there and I listened to the message, I think the shock of what he was talking about got to me first. This was not on my description of my brain of what I was going to be hearing.
Mhm.
And the way he laid it out, and the way he was talking about the heavenly father, and just how much he loves us, and enough to sacrifice for us. And I started thinking about my own past. And even at that point, it wasn't like I woke up that morning thinking about my earthly father. I was just there, and it took me back to some scary moments when I was young, and some moments that I really struggled to get over. And even when I started believing in God, it took me a long time to still get over that. And I think that the shock of it just drew me into the message. And like you said, you're a public speaker. I do some as well. And you hope that your message is going to connect with somebody. That's the hope of it. We don't do it because we just like to be up there speaking. It's the
Right.
hope that you're going to help somebody who is listening. And I've kept in touch with this pastor, and I'm no longer at his church. I'm at a different church that I work at. But his message, he knows what an impact that was. And obviously, him being a great pastor, he says, that wasn't me, that was the Holy Spirit.
Mhm.
But exactly what he laid down, what he had planned for that day, was exactly what I needed to start my healing. It didn't heal me.
Yeah.
It started my process of healing. And it also started my process of a relationship with God. It did twofold in one fell swoop. And it definitely was not something that I expected. I wasn't looking for it. It really was almost like, hey, I'm just window shopping here. And then all of a sudden it was, hey, here's everything you've ever wanted in this store right now.
Right. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Let's talk a little bit about that, because you mentioned the healing that you weren't expecting it, to get it, but that, of course, just the beginning of it that day. But let's talk a little bit about trauma, and the healing from trauma, and how that has impacted you now, and even in your message when you're talking to others, about Christ, and about the difference that He's made in your life, to help you even heal through some of the things that you had grew up with, with your dad, and maybe even some of the other things from your past. How important or impactful has your new relationship with Christ been in that healing journey? And if you could share with us just one or two things, examples of healing that has taken place since you've been on this journey.
So the one thing I can say is, before he heals, he exposes. And that was my journey, was to be exposed, to say, hey, these are all things I buried deep inside. I was not this 7-year-old beaten up child who was terrified of the beating. I was the fighter. I was the military guy. Nobody's going to hurt me. Nobody can touch me anymore. And that's where I buried it down.
Mm.
And God had revealed that back to me. And he revealed to me the feelings that I felt of being dyslexic and not being able to learn, and me just choosing to go back to school again. This was, hey, you're not smart. You didn't do school well the first time. These are all things he was exposing out of me. And I felt as though before I can heal, I didn't even know what I was healing from. I know that I had a sense of not belonging. I am covered in tattoos, and I tell people all the time that tattoos were, hey, I want you to look at my tattoo, not the person. If you're looking at the tattoo, you're not looking at me.
Right.
And I covered myself with them, and I didn't realize any of that really as deeply as I did when I first started to follow God. So once he revealed it for me, then he started the healing process. And the healing process was long. It wasn't overnight. It was, hey, listen, these things that your dad did to you when you were young, yes, I know that this heavenly father will not do for me, but that didn't take away the pain. That
Right.
didn't, you know, give me the ability to forgive yet. Forgiveness was one of the last things that I was able to do. And I knew what Jesus went through, and I knew that he was forgiving people. And one of the lines I always used was, well, I know I'm not Jesus because I don't forgive. So it was one of those cop outs that I used and said, that's just who I am. And,
Right.
my journey is to hold on to some of this. And it was bitterness, and it was a disease on me. And little by little, I was able to just trust more in his plan for me and start to see what was happening in my life and realize that all of this had a purpose. And you talk about ministering to others, that is part of the plan as well. And I tell people all the time, when you go through something horrible, it's not always about you. And it's hard for them to understand that because
Yeah.
they're like, no, I went through it. And you're absolutely right. You did go through it. You did go through the pain, but maybe you went through that pain because you're strong enough and the next person is not. And that person you're ministering to now needs to hear what you're about to lay down, the reality of what you went through, and them to understand, hey, there's a way out. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, for a cliche. But, when I ministered to other people, that was part of my story as well. And that all helped me heal from that moment and go, there was a purpose for this. I love that there was a purpose for it, because who wants to go through something like that without purpose?
Mhm.
And the other thing I always say is, when we read the Bible, we know how it ends. We read the entire story. We know the ending. It's great. When we're in our own lives, we don't know the ending. We don't know the next step. So for me, going through it, I now look back and go, okay, I know the ending to that chapter. But while I
Yeah.
was going through it, I was filled with just bitterness. And I was not the, quote unquote, perfect Christian and forgiving everybody and happy. I was beaten and broken and hurting. And it was a very slow process.
Yeah, yeah, and I want to just hit on two things that you mentioned. One of the things I talk a lot about, and I'll even mention a little bit at the end, which is forgiveness, because forgiveness is so important, for yourself for one, but then for others also, because it when you live in unforgiveness, it holds you, it bounds you down so much, into the different opportunities in your life and the different spaces. And we do a virtual workshop, forgiveness workshop. And like I said, I'll talk a little bit about more on the end. But I always give the analogy of, if you think about the old black and white movies back in the day, and when they would show the prison scene, they would have, the guys will have the shackle with the big ball on the end, chain ball
Mhm.
and chain on it. And I said, that's forgiveness. Forgiveness is like that. Like, you're dragging it, and it goes everywhere you go. It goes into every relationship that you go in. It goes into every situation that you go in. When you're carrying unforgiveness, you're dragging this ball throughout your life. And the thing is, you have the key to it. Like, you have the key to take it off just by beginning to learn to forgive and to, release some of those things, and, let yourself out of this ball and chain and be free. And forgiveness can give us that. So I wanted to touch on that, but I also wanted to touch on another thing that you were mentioning about, and it's crazy because I did a recording earlier today and was kind of talking about the same thing. Is when we're going through our go through, when we're going through the things that we're dealing with in real time, that we don't always see that it's going to work out in our end. But as a believer, as a Christian, a lot of times we hear and we recite, the scripture that all things work, for our good. But then when it comes down to living it out, it's like we forget that it says all. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's all things. It's those things that we perceive as being good, as well as those things that we perceive as being bad as well. And it's the knowledge and the belief that, if God allowed me to go to it, He's going to take me through it. And when I get on the other end, whether the benefit is for me or the benefit is for someone else, there is a purpose in me going through this, going through this pain. And I think
Yep.
that oftentimes, sometimes depending on, how we feel as we grow through, we kind of forget that part. It's like, look, what I'm saying? This is hard. I don't know about who is supposed to help out, once I get to the other side, but it's hard for me going through it. But I think if we could remember that, and really stand on that scripture that, all things work for our good, that even in those worst times, even in those trials that we don't feel too good about, even in those trials that we can't really wrap our mind around how it's going to work out for our good, but just believing that it's going to work out for our good, just to give us that little more strength that we need in order to get through it. And then once we get on the other side of it, we do, realize, okay, it wasn't just for me. I think it was some things that I needed to learn in the midst of it, but it definitely was some things that I needed to learn, not necessarily for myself, but to be able to help other people as they go through the same thing.
Yeah. I think with the ball and chain, you have two different types of people. You have a lot of types of people, but two that I think of right now with that scenario. One,
Mhm.
your audience might not love to hear this, but you have the ones that enjoy carrying that ball and chain around, and they are the
Yeah.
ones making the noise and grumbling as they're pulling it because they
Yes.
want everybody to see it. And then you have the people who pull it and forget it's there. And they're just pulling it around and they don't realize it's there. They don't realize it's slowing themselves down. And like you said, when you're in other relationships, you don't realize that that ball and chain is still there. And when you have those two types of people, you go, okay, well, how do I minister to both? Because you have one that truly seems
Mhm.
to enjoy it and they're not going to forgive based on the fact that they want to hold on to something that was done wrong to them. So they feel justified for whatever is going on in their brain. And that's somebody who enjoys the drama or they enjoy something else of it. And I think with those people, you start to realize that, hey, really, where's your enjoyment coming from? If this is joy, I don't want to be a part of that. And I think they have ultimately realized that it's not joyful at all to be known as the person who's always grumbling, always complaining. It's funny because I just did a podcast on my own that we nicknamed Grumbling. It was about the Israelites who grumbled after being saved from Egypt. And I
Yeah.
think to a certain extent, yes, you're allowed to grumble. And I don't take away somebody who went through something to be able to have to, recognize it, go through the process of it and grumble all the way. But at that point, if you're choosing to stay there, it's a choice.
Mhm.
The other people are the ones who forget it's there. And that's where I kind of stick myself, where I didn't even realize these things were affecting me the way they were. I didn't realize I had this large thing that I was lugging around
Yeah.
in my life, changing all of my opinions, the direction of what I was doing, my career, my everything. Just it wasn't ceasing from every part of my life. And what I realized at that point, once I found God, is, man, this thing is here and I need to start to release it. And here, I forgot where the key was. There was no key. So how am I going to start to get rid of this? And it was link by link by link and going, hey, every time he exposes something else, how do I get rid of this link? How do I chip away at it? One of the things I love with men's groups is they always say in men's groups, you need to take a hammer to the men and they need to change. They need to be this, they need to be that. And for me, it's you need to just chisel away, just polish.
Mhm.
We're all trying to do the best that we can do. And I think when you look at the ball and chain, it's it would have been great to just take a key and take it off and been done. But
Yeah.
I needed to chip away little by little. And then with the other scenario that you mentioned, and this is about with I apologize, I'm drawing a blank. The second part was
I think I talked about the forgiveness. We talked about the forgiveness and the
yep.
ball and chain. Uh, to be able to forgive and realizing that you're taking that, that unforgiveness into every situation that you go in. I
Yep,
don't
and
know
then there
if
was one right after it, and I can't remember what you asked me. This is the second question of it. Um, but I'm sure I had a great answer for that as well.
Yeah.
But yes,
Yeah.
I think with the ball and chain, definitely it is something where, if you recognize it's there, start working on it. Start working on it. If you have the key, great, get the key. When it comes to forgiveness, it is. I've heard all the different things. Hey, it's for you. It's for them. It's for. Um, all of that is all well and good. For me, it really came down to God forgave all of these things. God was
Mhm.
able to put himself out there for all these things. I can do the same. Oh, I remember the second one was when you talk about going through something and at the end of the tunnel, not realizing what you went through and who it was
Yeah.
for and God leading to those places. To me, that's biblical sacrifice. That's love. It's exactly what God says. God went through pain. This is the whole point of Jesus coming down as a human. He
Yeah.
went through pain and suffering. He lived like we did. That was sacrifice. So what I do now is when I look at things and I go through tough times, it's no longer, man, this is awful. God, get me out of this. This is sacrifice that I'm making for myself, for my family, and for somebody else who's going to need to hear about this at some point. So when you flip the script on it and you look at it, it's no longer this is the worst thing in the world. It's,
Yeah.
man, okay, I'm going through biblical loving sacrifice. This is how I love better, is going through this. And then you have other apologists who talk about, this is where you grow the most in your faith. And it's 100% true. This is where
Mhm.
you grow the most. So I don't really shun away from those tough times. I kind of go, hey, I'm going to grow in my faith and I'm going to grow as a human being, loving somebody else. These are all great things that are going to happen.
Yeah, yeah, I love it, and like I said, I do think that sometimes in the midst of it, we forget that, but if we can hold on to that thought and belief that it's all going to work out, for my good in the end, whether it's enjoyable, that's a different that's a different angle, but it's going to work out. Um, I want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned about earlier, as we were talking about, being right where God wanted you to be, and realizing that even though you didn't see it coming, now that you're here, it's kind of like, oh, this is where He wanted me to be.
Yeah.
Like He has a design for each of our lives, kind of, I want to say, laid out somewhat for us, and we're just kind of walking through it according to the way that He would kind of lead us. But in your own words, with your experience, how do you think that kind of plays out with God knowing us and knowing the things that we need, number one, and knowing how He wants to use us and allowing us to go through these different experiences to get us to the point that now, like coming from a troubled home, or should I say a troubled relationship with your dad, and then taking on this persona to kind of hide who you were, on the inside, and then now getting into this space of being, vulnerable enough to be able to say, this who I was, this who God showed me, allowing me to, work through my traumas and things of that nature, to now being able to minister to others. How do you think, you know, or should I say, I don't know exactly how I want to ask the question, but how do you believe that kind of played out into
Mhm.
getting you from where you were to becoming the person that now you're right where God wanted you to be?
Well, growing up, I mean, I grew up in a family that loved show business. So I was always on stage. I
Mhm.
didn't realize that it was for a purpose. I never made as an actor. I always joke around. I said I couldn't sing, I couldn't dance, and I couldn't act, so I didn't make it. But I love the world of acting and I love being on stage. And who would have known that that would have grown the skills that I needed to be on stage talking to people, or even just having a conversation off of
Mhm.
stage, just having the comfort around somebody to have these conversations. That was something that God was building in me that I had no idea what the purpose was. When I look at my size and my tattoos and all the things that I had to go through, I go, yeah, you know what? I went through seeking adrenaline and getting tattoos and covering myself. I'm feeling bad about myself. But what it turned out to be is I am now more approachable as a pastor than somebody who is really broken going, I don't need the polished, good looking
Yeah.
pastor who is,
Yeah.
who doesn't seem to relate with me at all. No, I want the guy who looks like you. And I've had people at church come up to me and say, I came to church, didn't know what I was going to find. I saw you and I stayed because you look like a mess. And it's the greatest compliment to me, because I'm going, that's wonderful, because I am.
Yeah.
And I'm okay being a mess. I'm okay being vulnerable, saying, you're right, I'm a mess. I'm trying to do the best I can. I'm trying to learn more. I'm trying to live for Christ more every day and bring people along with me and disciple and all the things I'm meant to do. But I was meant to look this way, to be this way, to act this way, to get to a point. And even now, and I tell people all the time, my lot in life might not be to preach to millions of people like some really famous preachers out there.
Yeah.
But what if I was the one to teach somebody, to disciple them, and they went on and did it? Does that make me less important? I think that my goal in life, my purpose in life, was purposely made by God, and perfectly, by going, hey, I'm going to put you through some things. And at the end of it, you're going to have the ability to reach people that other people can't reach, with a message that other people don't have. This is your entire podcast, which is so brilliant about it, is you have all these different guests who live differently. And God did that on purpose. He didn't say, let me have everybody have the same issues, the same problems through life, because first of all, it's boring. And second of all, then we don't need anything like this. Let me give everybody their story, their testimony. Firstly, because you're special. And second, because certain people are going to be into your circles of fellowship and love. And you're just going to know, man, I just connected with them differently. We went through the same thing. They understand me. That's on purpose also. And I think he gave me this for that purpose throughout my life. Every moment that I can look at, the purpose was for where I am now. And to be honest, that's because I haven't seen the next chapter. The next chapter, I might say, oh man, that was actually for this. And I could do that the rest of my life. And I love that. That's why I love the journey that he has me on.
Yes, yes, I love it. I love it too, man. Really quickly, David. I know we're getting close to our time. I want to talk, because I know you're a podcaster as well. So I want to talk a little bit about your podcast, and then I also know that you're working on a book, a project right now. I want to talk a little bit about that too. So let's talk about the podcast first. What is the premise of the podcast, and how long have you been working on that?
So we've been podcasting now for probably about 8 months. It is me and two other hosts. They are two people that I met in my men's group. And we are three guys that all direct to Jesus in very different ways. So you have somebody like me, who I ended up going the route of academia. So I studied biblical archaeology, and I studied apologetics, and all of my conversations, debates, discussions have to do with the reality of historical knowledge, archaeological knowledge, scientific knowledge pointing to Christ. You have one of my other hosts, his name is Jason, and he is everything is symbols to him. And it is, hey, this is allegory and this is symbolism, but all leading to Christ. It's so beautiful how he interweaved all of this pointing to Christ. And then you have Javi, my last host, and he is just a lover of apologetics as well, but he is so faithful, just believes in the inerrant word of the Bible, which I do as well, but he does it in such a beautiful, childlike fashion. I absolutely love the three of us together. And so the Boundless Bible, we just talk about biblical stories, biblical knowledge, but going from three very different perspectives, all leading north. As far as my book, I took my love of apologetics and I wrote a book called Jesus Christ, That's a Lot of Evidence. And I was blessed enough to have a publishing company love it and want to publish it. So it should be coming out within the next probably 3 to 6 months. Easiest way to find both of them is on my website, which is drdavidshapiro.org. And you can kind of keep in touch and see when that book releases. I also have another one that's kind of head right behind it that I'm writing right now. And that one's called The Pharisee I Didn't See. And that's about me. That's me, the way that I lived in the beginning and thinking that I was living the Christian lifestyle. And man, there was a Pharisee in me that I didn't realize. And that book is going to call people out a little bit, where they're going to go, man, that hit me in the gut, but I needed it.
Yeah, yeah. The title alone has already struck me, right? And I'm just like, oh, I'm ready to read that right now. So I love it. Definitely keep us informed so we can definitely have all of those links and things of that nature connected in the descriptions of this podcast. David, I really appreciate you being here, man. I want you to leave us with a word of advice, inspiration, however you feel. Um, and also leave us with your social media handles and things of that nature where we can find you and get in contact with you and stay in contact with you. I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Make sure you guys are checking us out on our main website, the dealhealfulfill.org. Again, that's dealhealfulfill.org, where you can find more information about us as an overall company. And also make sure you guys go to ernestjamesspeakslife.com. Again, that's ernestjamesspeakslife.com. That is my website to have me to come out to be a speaker at your school or organization, or maybe even to facilitate a workshop. Yeah, you can go to ernestjamesspeaklife.com. Make sure you guys hit us up there. Also, ebooksbyejames.com is the space where we house our ebooks. There is several ebooks that I've written. One is called The Core Four, which is the core four values that every daughter should get from her father. Is an ebook that I really love, and we actually talk about that ebook on the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. I discuss those four core values with the dads that I have on. Also, one of my other books that I'm very happy about is Forgiving Me, the 4-step guide to self forgiveness. That is also an ebook that I have there. And there's several other ebooks. So make sure you guys go to ebooksbyejames.com in order to check those ebooks out. Also, our inspirational t-shirt line at deal2healtees.com. That's deal, the number 2, healtees.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That is our tagline. So go there and check out our inspirational tees that we have available, including our podcast merch, which is our t-shirts with our podcast logos on it. There's one for the Deal to Heal with James podcast, as well as one for the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. And last but not least, we talked about it a little bit in the midst of the conversation, but over the last couple of years, I've been blessed to be a part of an organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And what we do, we have free virtual workshops bi-monthly talking about everything surrounding forgiveness, forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, forgiveness of the world, just everything surrounding forgiveness. The workshops are absolutely free, but the information is priceless. So make sure you guys go to forgivenessmission.com in order to sign up for our next virtual workshop, or you can go to Eventbrite and look up the Forgiveness Workshop sponsored by the Forgiveness Mission. Again, that's forgivenessmission.com to sign up for our next virtual workshop. So whenever you're listening to this episode, either a workshop just ended or there's one that's coming up soon. So make sure you go to forgivenessmission.com in order to sign up for our next free virtual workshop surrounding forgiveness. And once again, David, I want to say thank you so very much for being on. Thank you for sharing your story with us and your expertise. I want you to have the last word, so the floor is yours.
I'm sure as a pastor, everyone would expect me to talk about healing from the perspective of God, but I'm going to talk about it from the perspective of person to person. And this is my experience as a chaplain to a local fire department. Things happen, really horrible things happen to people, and it is in our nature as people who love other people to try to help, to try to give them advice, to try to soothe them with information that is going to try to get them to feel better. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what I find sometimes is just being present, sometimes silently present, just being there to be somebody that to hug on, somebody to love on them, somebody to take care of them for a moment, somebody to distract their brain from the what do I need to do to get home, get fed, get this, just somebody in that realm. You don't need to speak into what they just went through to help them heal. Just being there and loving on them and being silent to them really is enough. And I think what ends up happening is When we are hurt, we try to speak our way out of it. When we see somebody hurt, we try to speak their way out of it. And the truth is, sometimes you just need to take a moment with the pain. And yes, then realize the God part, that God has you. He's right there with you. If you, in that silence, in that moment of silence, just listen for his voice. And what you'll find is there is comfort there for you with the people he's put in your life, but with him as well. So I hope that with any, knowledge that I can pass on to somebody, would be just be there for somebody in those moments in silence and give them a hug. And that's all they really need. Man, that would have done a lot for me at different moments of my life. There was a lot of chatter, a lot of noise, and not a lot of silence. And I think that sometimes we just really need some silence. As far as social media handles, I am terrible on the computer. So what I'll say is you can go to my website that we gave you. But if you look up David Shapiro on, on AOL and on Instagram, you'll see my face with the big beard and all. So you could definitely find me there. But if you want to check the exact locations of where to find that, my website's probably the best way.
All right. Thank you so much, David, for being here. We can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, where our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Until next time, you guys be blessed. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.